All right, so the C chord is made up of the triad C, E, and G, which is the first, third, and fifth notes of the C scale. Now, there are a lot of different variations that combine those three notes, on the 6 strings of the guitar, but the first and the most popular one is the one down here on the fret, on the first, second, and third fret. We're going to take our first finger and we're going to put it on the first fret of the B string. Our second finger is going to be on the second fret of the D string, and our third finger is going to be on the third fret of the A string. Now, some things to keep in mind for this chord: you want to make sure that you do not strum the low E string. That is not part of this chord, so you want to make sure that it doesn't resonate while you strum. You could always take your thumb, let it come across the top, and just touch that low E string so it's muted while you're strumming, and that way you don't have to think so much about accidentally hitting it while you strum. And so a common problem is that your third finger, while it's pressing down here on the A string, is going to be laying and muting the D string behind it, and the second string is going to be laying and muting the G string behind it, and then your first finger on the first fret of the B string is going to be laying and muting the E string, the high E string. So to prevent that, you want to keep in mind that you need to press on the strings with the very tips of your fingers. You need to come down perpendicular to the neck of the guitar. Don't come in at an angle to where your finger is laying across the strings behind it. You want to make sure that you're coming down, that you arch your fingers and you come straight down onto those strings. Especially for that first finger, if you keep getting that muted high E string, just focus on that first finger and arch it up. Make sure you come up with that finger. Press on the sweet spot of the fret with the very tip of your finger, and make sure you're coming straight down on the string and not at an angle. Our second variation of the C chord is going to be a bar chord on the third fret. So we're going to bar the 5 strings, excluding the low E string. That string is not going to be a part of the chord. So we're just going to bar from strings A all the way down to the high E. And then we're going to take our remaining fingers and we're going to put them on the 5th fret. All 3 are going to be on the 5th fret on the D, G, and B string. Now, some people like to use just their ring finger to bar those 3 strings rather than trying to play it with your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger. If you'd rather do it that way, that's totally fine. Now, this variation, we're actually using the A shape here. So you see your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th finger, we're making the A shape and we're just barring it 3 frets up so that it turns into a C. Now, bar chords are notorious for being difficult to play, so if ever you try to play this variation, you want to keep a couple things in mind. First, you want to make sure that when you're playing the bar with your index finger, that you play with the side of your finger. You push down with the side of the finger, not so much with the front, because you're going to be able to get more pressure with the side of your finger where it's more bony right there. You'll be able to push down better. And you also want to make sure that you get good counter pressure with the thumb on the back of the neck of the guitar. And that way you can get that good enough pressure to get a clean sound from all 5 of those strings. Now remember, the low E string is not part of this chord, so you don't even need to bar it. You could just leave it out. A common problem for this variation is that fingers 2, 3, and 4 here are kind of crowded. They're all on the same fret. So, that's just going to come with practice of getting all those fingers to fit on the same fret. You also want to make sure that your pinky finger is not muting the high E string. If you do have a muted high E string with that pinky, you just got to arch that pinky back up, pick that hand up, and get that finger, that pinky finger, coming in, arching and coming straight down on that string so you're not muting the string behind it. For this variation, we're going to be barring 4 strings, strings D down all the way to the high E string. So we're going to be barring those 4 strings with our index finger. Remember, when you're doing a bar, you want to try to press with the side of your finger, not completely all the way on the side, that's impossible, but more so on the side than on the pad, because the pad of your finger is a lot softer and it's going to be harder to press down, get some good pressure. For this chord, the E and the A string are not part of it, so you want to make sure that you're not strumming those 2 strings for this chord. Now, the other part of this chord, we're going to have our pinky on the 8th fret of the high E string. So this is quite a stretch, and that's why we're going to be using our pinky so that we can get that stretch a lot easier than trying to use any of our other fingers. Another variation of the C is going to be our E-shaped bar chord all the way up here on the 8th fret of the guitar. So we're going to be barring the 8th fret with our index finger, and we're going to be creating the E shape with our second, third, and fourth finger. One thing you want to be sure of is that your pinky finger is not muting the strings behind it. If you're having that issue, just take your hand and you can move it away from the fretboard so that you can arch your pinky and make sure it's coming down perpendicular onto that string and not coming in at an angle. The last C chord variation we're going to look at is all the way up here on the neck on the 10th fret. We're going to have our first finger on the D string, 10th fret. We're going to have our second finger on the G string on the 12th fret. And then our third finger is going to be on the high E string, also on the 12th fret. And then our pinky is going to be on the B string on the 13th fret. So our second, third, and fourth finger are making the D shape, right? And then our first finger is adding the C note here on the D string. Now keep in mind for this chord that the E and the A string are not part of it, so you want to start your strum on the D string.